Tonight, let your shoulders soften as if a warm hand has quietly rested there. Let the muscles around your eyes loosen the way curtains ease shut at the end of a long day. If you are listening from a bed, allow the bed to hold you. If you are listening from a chair, let the chair take the weight you have carried. And if you are listening while the world still moves around you, then simply let this story become a gentle pocket of stillness, something you can step into, even for a moment. In your mind, we are standing at the edge of the Maidum Desert in Egypt, when the last heat of the afternoon has begun to fade. The sun is not gone yet, but it has become kind. Light stretches low across the sand, turning each grain into a quiet spark. A thin wind slides through the open space, not loud, not urgent, just steady, like a slow breath that the desert has been practicing for thousands of years. And in that wide calm, a soft question rises the way evening stars rise, unhurried, inevitable. A king usually needs only one place to rest. So why would one king leave behind 3 great pyramids, not 3 small monuments, not 3 modest experiments, but 3 of the largest pyramids of Egypt's old kingdom, each standing in its own landscape, each wearing a different angle of stone, each carrying the same stubborn silence? The king's name was Sneferu, and his time was long before the bustling streets, long before the modern world that asks so much of your attention. Yet the question he left behind feels strangely familiar because it sounds like something the mind does late at night. Why so much? If tonight your thoughts have been looping, replaying conversations, scanning tomorrow, counting what was not finished, then this is a good place to be. We will not argue. We will not force the puzzle to open. We will do something gentler. We will listen. Somewhere far behind us, the modern world hums, phones, deadlines, bright screens. But out here, the horizon does not demand replies. The desert offers a different kind of calendar: dusk, star, coolness, and the long, patient night. Each time you exhale, imagine you set down one small worry like a pebble into the quiet sand for now. Because sometimes history does not speak with words. Sometimes it speaks with weight, with distance, with the calm patience of stone. Before we drift deeper into tonight's gentle journey, remember to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story. Here, you'll always find peaceful stories that soothe the heart and quiet the mind. Where are you listening from tonight? Leave a comment. Your presence adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. Now, breathe in, slowly, comfortably. And as you breathe out, imagine the desert air cooling by a single degree, like a lamp turning down. The world is still here, but it is softer at the edges. In the distance, the Maidum Pyramid rests on the horizon. It does not shine like a jewel. It is not trying to impress you. It simply exists, heavy and calm, like a thought you have carried for years without speaking it aloud. Once, long ago, it would have been faced in smooth white limestone that caught the sun and returned it to the sky. But time has worn away many things, and what remains is a shape that looks almost like a staircase of stone, an ancient geometry rising from sand. Close to it, near the enclosure wall on the northeast side, something quieter waits, a tomb that sits in plain sight and yet feels easy to overlook because it does not reach for the heavens. It rests near the earth. It is known today as Mastaba 17, one of the largest mastabas ever built at Maidum, set apart, solitary, almost as if it chose its own distance from the others. From far away, it can seem like a simple, low mass, a rectangle pressed into the desert. But as you draw nearer in your imagination, you begin to feel the intention in its stillness. This is not the stillness of abandonment. This is the stillness of a door that was closed gently and never reopened. People have wondered for a long time what these 3 pyramids meant. Many assumed the story was trial and error, one pyramid too steep, another revised, the last one successful. It is a very human habit to turn great mysteries into neat progressions, like steps in a manual. We like to believe there is a straight line from mistake to improvement, because it makes the past feel manageable. But the desert does not arrange itself in straight lines, it makes its own patterns. Dunes that shift without drama, ripples that are erased and rewritten overnight. And the evidence that matters most is not loud, it is the absence of something. In the pyramids associated with Sneferu, explorers found no trace of a stone sarcophagus, no heavy granite box waiting in the heart of the monument, no clear, undeniable statement that says, "Here is where the king slept his long sleep." Later, pyramids and earlier elite tombs often held such stone containers, and so the emptiness inside Sneferu's pyramids feels like a quiet gap in the story, a pause that asks you to lean closer, not to shout. So tonight, instead of pushing our way into that emptiness, we step sideways. We look for another kind of answer, one that might be smaller in height, but deeper in meaning. We walk slowly over sand that has cooled enough to feel silky. In your mind, your feet do not sink or struggle. They simply touch, lift, and touch again, like the slow rhythm of breathing. The wind brushes your sleeves. Somewhere, a tiny insect writes a delicate line across the surface and then disappears, leaving behind a signature that will not last until morning. As we approach Mastaba 17, notice how your own inner pace begins to match the landscape. The desert has a way of teaching the nervous system. Nothing here needs to be rushed. The Mastaba's outer form is plain in the way that old truths can be plain. It does not rely on decoration, it relies on presence. Around it, the desert opens wide and the sky becomes a deepening blue, the kind of blue that feels like a soft blanket being pulled up. If you could stand in the middle of the Maidum Desert, what do you think you would know best, the wind or the silence? Take your time with that question. You don't have to answer. Just let it float like a feather. Now imagine the entrance, except strangely, there was no entrance made for living feet, no built passage welcoming visitors down into the chambers. The structure was sunk into a cut in the bedrock, roofed over and covered, sealed in a way that suggests the resting place was meant to be protected not by clever tricks but by something simpler, by not being disturbed at all. And yet even without an obvious doorway, the Mastaba was built with remarkable care. Inside, the imagined corridors are not jagged, corners are softened, rounded as if someone long ago wanted every movement to be gentle, every touch to meet stone without harshness. It is almost tender, this attention to smoothness, like the way you might fold a blanket so it lies flat with no sharp creases. You can picture a faint red guideline once marked on pale stone, a quiet note for the builders. Shape this edge, soften that corner, make the path kind. Even the idea of that, an ancient hand drawing a line so that later hands would not scrape, feels like a small kindness traveling across millennia. This is where our story begins to glow with a soft, steady lantern of curiosity. Because in Mastaba 17 there is a presence that does not belong to an ordinary official. Deep within, beyond the imagined cool of limestone and the dust that settles like flour in still air, rests an enormous granite coffer, an early granite sarcophagus crafted with a seriousness that feels almost ceremonial. Granite is not an easy stone. It is dense, stubborn, patient. It holds cold in its skin. It does not forgive careless work. To shape such a coffer is to commit to time, and when you imagine it there, dark, heavy, smooth under the fingertips, it feels less like an object, and more like a sentence carved into silence, not shouted, not explained, simply placed. In the world of Sneferu, those beneath a king could be powerful, honored, respected. But above a vizier, above princes and officials, there was only one rank, a pharaoh. And so, without forcing the conclusion, you can feel how the question returns, gentler now, closer to the heart. What if the king's true resting place was not inside the tallest shapes, but beside them, where the desert could keep watch? What if the greatest monument is not always the one that can be seen from far away, but the one that can be kept quiet? As night deepens, the maiden horizon turns from gold to indigo. The wind becomes cooler, and the stars begin to gather, one by one, like slow, patient listeners arriving to hear an old story. In that widening darkness, the pyramid and the mastaba stand together, one reaching upward, one settling low, like two ways of speaking to time. And you, listener, are here with them. Here, no one rests alone. Every story from the past is a soft lantern in the dark, gently lighting our way tonight. So let the lantern be small. Let it be warm. Let it be enough. In the next part, we will step closer, into the hush of stone, into the careful layers of white limestone that were placed as if someone was smoothing a bed for eternity. We will follow the quiet evidence, not to prove anything, but to feel the shape of peace that ancient builders left behind. For now, take one more slow breath. Feel the exhale lengthen, like a tide pulling back. The desert is breathing, and you can breathe with it. The night has settled a little more now, the way a blanket settles when you stop adjusting it. If you're in bed, you might feel the weight of the day fading from your shoulders. If you're still awake in a room with small lights, let those lights become softer in your mind. Out here, in our imagined desert, the light comes mostly from the sky, cool, steady, and patient. We stand again near Meidum, where the pyramid rises like an old thought that refuses to leave. But tonight, we are not climbing it, not measuring it, not naming every angle. We are simply letting it be what it is, a presence, a silhouette, a calm shape against the stars. And beside it, closer than most people expect, Mastaba 17 waits in its low, grounded stillness. In the ancient world, a mastaba could be many things. A tomb, yes, but also a doorway of memory. A place where the living might come to offer water and bread, where names could be spoken so they would not be forgotten. Yet this one feels different. It sits alone, close to the pyramid, as if it chose the nearest seat at the edge of the king's shadow. Imagine the enclosure wall first, long, quiet stone lines set in the sand like the boundary of a dream. Outside the wall, the desert stretches wide. Inside, the air feels slightly different, as if the space has been asked to remain respectful. You can almost hear your own breath more clearly here. Take a slow inhale, and on the exhale, imagine the sound of sand sliding gently along a stone edge, barely a whisper. Now come closer to the mastaba. Its surface is not loud with writing. There are no crowded messages demanding your attention. Instead, the texture itself becomes the language. Limestone that once would have looked almost pale enough to glow at dawn, blocks laid with a care that feels like patience made solid. There is something soothing about orderly layers, about lines that meet cleanly, about stone placed so deliberately that even after centuries it still gives the impression of calm work. If tonight your mind has felt messy, too many tabs open, too many thoughts competing, then let this structure offer you a different sensation. Let it be a quiet example of one thing at a time, one block, then the next, then the next. And slowly a safe space takes shape, In our imagination, we do not force an entrance. We don't pry. We don't hurry. We simply walk around the outer edge, tracing the perimeter, as if we are reading a story with our fingertips instead of our eyes. The wind brushes the corners, the sand has cooled, and it gives off a faint, dry scent, like stone dust warmed by sun and then released into night. Somewhere beyond the wall, the world is still turning, but inside this place, time feels thicker, slower, as if you could lean on it. Now imagine a small temple nearby, one of those modest structures that once stood at Meidum to receive offerings and hold ritual quiet. In many Egyptian places, walls were filled with carved scenes and careful hieroglyphs, but here the temple is strangely plain, not empty in a sad way, just quiet, as if the builders decided that silence itself would be the decoration. Before we go deeper, linger for a moment outside again where the Mastaba meets the open air. The stars above Meidum are not the same stars you see between city buildings. They feel closer, cleaner, gentle enough to touch. A band of the Milky Way stretches like a pale river across the sky, and the desert below seems to recognize it, two quiet surfaces facing one another. Listen, the wind is different at night. It no longer carries heat. It carries a coolness that slides along your skin and then disappears, as if the air itself is practicing how to be light. If you could place your palm on the Mastaba's limestone, you might feel that coolness stored there, and you might sense the way stone holds the memory of temperature without complaint. Somewhere, far off, a nightbird calls once, then stops. Silence returns so softly that it feels intentional. In that moment, the whole place becomes a kind of breathing exercise. Inhale with the sky, exhale with the sand. And if your mind tries to wander, gently bring it back by noticing small things. An imagined line where two blocks meet, the faint curve of a corner, the soft grit of dust in the air. Small details are like stepping stones across a restless mind. If you were to sit down here, leaning against the Mastaba's outer wall, what do you think would arrive first? A thought or a feeling of peace? Picture it, a low doorway, a simple threshold, and inside, dimness that makes you naturally lower your voice. The air is cool. Dust floats in a narrow beam of moonlight, turning the darkness into something gentle, like milky water. If you were there, you might notice how your body would automatically slow down, how even your footsteps would become softer. Your nervous system would understand. This is not a place for sharp movements. This is not a place for argument. It's a place for letting the heart unclench. And if a thought rises, something from your day, something unfinished, let it rise and pass. Do not chase it, just notice it, the way you might notice a cloud crossing the moon, and then let it keep moving. Now we return to the Mastaba's hidden interior, not by digging or breaking, but by imagining what it feels like to step into a world made for quiet. The first sensation is temperature. Limestone holds coolness in a way that feels clean. It is not the damp cold of a basement. It is a dry, steady cool, like the underside of a stone in shade. The second sensation is sound, or rather, the lack of it. Inside a sealed place, sound does not travel far. It folds back into itself. Your breath becomes the loudest thing, and even that can be softened when you choose to breathe slowly. In that hush, you can imagine the builders at work long ago, not frantic, not careless, people moving with deliberate rhythm, lifting, placing, smoothing. Their hands would have been dusty, their shoulders would have been tired. And yet the work they did was not only physical, it was emotional. Because to build a resting place is to acknowledge the truth all humans share. Life is brief, and we want our endings to be gentle. Think of the last time you prepared a bed for someone you love, a child, a partner, even yourself after a hard day. You might have fluffed the pillow, straightened the sheet, made sure nothing scratchy would touch skin. That instinct is ancient. It crosses time. It does not belong to one culture or one century. Here, the same instinct appears in stone. Corners rounded, edges softened, surfaces made smooth enough that even the darkness would not feel sharp. And then, quietly, deeper in, the granite coffer waits. You don't have to see it clearly. In fact, it's better if you don't strain. Let it appear slowly, as if your eyes are adjusting. First, a darker shape within darkness. Then the outline of a rectangular mass. Then the faint suggestion of smooth plains that catch a little moonlight. And hold it. Granite feels different from limestone. Where limestone can seem chalky and bright, granite is dense and closed, like a secret kept well. It is the kind of stone that makes you believe in weight. If you touched it, your hand would feel the chill that has been stored inside for centuries, and when you imagine that chill, something in your own body might relax, because cold stone is honest. It doesn't pretend. It doesn't change quickly, it simply stays. There is comfort in that steadiness. Outside, the pyramid still stands. But inside this low mastaba, the feeling is not of height, it is of shelter, of being held. Now let the story give you a soft thread of curiosity, just enough to keep you listening, not enough to wake you. Why would this mastaba hold such a massive granite coffer, when the great pyramids nearby hold none that we can find? You do not need to answer. You can simply let the question rest beside you, like a book left open on a nightstand. Sometimes questions are not problems to solve. Sometimes they are companions that help the mind slow down, because they are larger than any one day's worries. As you listen, imagine the limestone blocks again, those pale stones perhaps taken from the finishing work of the pyramid itself. Smooth, clean, almost new in their brightness. It's a strange thought that the final touches of a monument reaching toward the sky might have been shared with a resting place sunk into the earth, one project feeding another, one act of making beauty supporting an act of making peace. And in that connection you can feel a theme emerging, quietly like a scent. The theme is not mystery for mystery's sake, it is care. Care for a body that would no longer breathe. Care for a name that would continue. Care for the idea that sleep, true sleep, should be protected. If tonight you feel like you have been protecting everyone else, your family, your co-workers, your responsibilities, then let this ancient care turn toward you for a moment. Let the stone say you are allowed to rest. Let the desert say you do not need to carry the whole world into the night. And if tonight's story reminded you of a beautiful memory, feel free to share it below. A small memory can be a warm candle for someone else who is listening in the dark. Now we will step even closer in the next part, following a gentle path of clues, small differences in ritual, tiny marks of intention, until the soft discovery begins to glow like a lantern behind closed doors. For now, breathe in, breathe out. Feel the quiet deepen, one layer at a time, like limestone, like granite, like sleep. Let the story keep moving at the pace of an unhurried night. If you notice your thoughts trying to sprint ahead, gently invite them back, as if you were guiding a tired friend down a quiet hallway. Tonight, we do not need to arrive anywhere quickly. We only need to keep drifting, one soft step at a time. In your mind, we are still at Meidum. The sky above is now fully dark, a deep velvet blue. The stars look steady, as if they have been practicing patience since before language was born. The sand is cooler. The stone is cooler. And your breathing can be cooler too, slower, longer, more forgiving. We stand near the enclosure wall again. And then we begin a small, simple journey. Not a journey across continents, not an adventure with danger, but a journey measured in calm attention. We follow the ground as it gently rises and falls, as if the desert itself is a sleeping animal, its back forming soft dunes under moonlight. The wind slides past your ears and it carries no urgency. It carries only the familiar message: everything passes, everything settles. As we walk, the Meidum Pyramid remains on our left, its stepped silhouette like a dark mountain made by human hands. And, to our right, Mastaba 17 rests low and quiet, nearer than most visitors expect, like a deep note beside a high one. You might notice how the two forms feel like two kinds of thought. One thought reaches upward, asking to be seen from far away. The other thought stays close to the ground, asking only to be left in peace. And perhaps if you are someone who spends your days being visible, answering emails, showing up, performing competence, then this low, hidden structure will feel especially kind. It suggests there is dignity in privacy, there is safety in quiet, there is strength in not needing to shine all the time. If you could build one room for your own rest, no phones, no notifications, no expectations, what would you place inside first? Light or silence? Let that question remain open. You do not have to decide. The desert does not rush you. Now we move closer to the Mastaba's edge and we imagine how the ancient landscape once looked when the pyramid's casing stones were new, bright, and smooth. Picture the pyramid as a pale shape that caught sunrise like a mirror and returned it to the world. The desert around it would have felt less like ruin and more like a carefully prepared stage. Walls, pathways, small temples, and the slow rhythm of ritual visits. But even then, amid all that intention, the Mastaba's quietness would have been noticeable. It would have been a place that asked visitors to lower their voices, the way you lower your voice in a library, not because someone demands it, but because the space itself deserves it. Now imagine a gentle figure from a later time, an early archaeologist moving patiently, not with the hunger of conquest, but with the discipline of careful observation. In the modern world, one name often appears near Meidum, Flinders Petrie, but tonight his name is not a banner. It is just a soft footstep in our story. Picture him not as a hero, but as a listener, someone who noticed that in certain places the most meaningful clues were not dramatic objects, but small consistencies, the way stones were laid, the way corners were rounded, the way sand settled differently against an old wall. Patient work is a kind of meditation. It teaches the mind to stop chasing fireworks and begin appreciating quiet patterns. If you have ever cleaned a room late at night, slowly, almost absent-mindedly, then you know how repetitive motion can calm the brain. You fold, you wipe, you place things where they belong, and in doing so, you begin to feel that your own inner world might also be arranged more gently. That is how I want this part of the story to feel. We are folding time. We are smoothing the edges of a mystery, not to erase it, but to make it safe to hold. So we imagine the Mastaba's interior again, not in sharp, technical diagrams, but in sensations. A corridor that feels narrow enough to make you breathe quieter. A chamber that feels cooler than the air outside. A stillness so complete you can almost hear dust settling one invisible grain at a time. The limestone around you is pale and calm. Your mind might want to label it, to categorize it, to store it as information. But tonight, let it be simpler. It is smooth stone in darkness. It is a quiet wall that has waited a very long time, and then the granite coffer, heavier and darker, sits like a closed eyelid. It is easy to imagine why it feels important. Granite was not casually chosen. It was costly in effort. It asked for transport, shaping, patience. To place a granite coffer in a mastaba is to declare that what rests here matters enough to deserve stubborn stone. Yet the strange thing remains. The nearby pyramids do not offer us the same obvious container. So the story invites us into a softer kind of reasoning, the kind that does not shout. Perhaps the pyramids were built as cosmic signs, great geometric prayers offered to the sky. Perhaps the true resting place was kept quieter, lower, nearer the ground, protected by the simplest protection of all: uncertainty. When a place is not clearly labeled, it is harder to disturb. When a place is not easily found, it can remain untouched longer. And if you have ever hidden something precious, not out of shame, but out of care, then you understand this instinct. Sometimes we do not place what we love in the brightest window. Sometimes we place it in a drawer, wrapped carefully, where only gentle hands will reach. The ancient world had its own reasons, its own fears, its own hopes, but the human impulse behind protection is familiar. In that way, this story becomes less about pyramids and more about you, about what you protect, about what you keep private, about what you hope will remain safe when time keeps moving. Now, as we continue our gentle journey, we let ourselves notice one more small detail, something that feels almost like a whisper from ritual. In different places built for Sneferu, offering tables and small temple arrangements can vary. The differences are not loud. They do not change the sky. But they suggest that even within one reign, there were subtle shifts, like a person learning a calmer way to speak to grief. One place faces its gestures one way. Another place receives them differently. And in that tiny difference, the past feels alive, not frozen. It feels like people were trying, adjusting, refining, not out of failure, but out of care. If you have ever changed the way you comfort yourself, learning a new bedtime routine, turning off the phone earlier, choosing softer music, then you already know what that looks like. It is not dramatic, it is gentle self-education. The builders of stone were also learning how to hold quiet. And there is another detail, small, tender, almost invisible unless you slow down enough to notice it. Along certain edges you might imagine a faint trace of red, the kind of mineral pigment that could be brushed onto pale stone. Not a painting meant to impress, just a guideline, a humble mark that says, shape it here, round it here, make it gentler. It is moving to think of that line existing at all. A builder standing in dim light, drawing a curve so the next hand would follow it. A future foot would not catch on a sharp corner, a future shoulder would not scrape. Even in a place meant for endings, someone cared about comfort. If you've ever left a small kindness for your future self, setting out clothes the night before, filling a glass of water, writing a note that says, slow down, then you understand the spirit of that red line. It is quiet love. Now imagine the sealing itself, not as an act of fear, but as a final smoothing. Stones placed, gaps filled, surfaces leveled, until the mastaba became almost indistinguishable from the desert's own geometry. The entrance not displayed, the path not advertised, just a calm decision. Let this remain undisturbed. In the modern world, so much of life is visible, tracked, shared, measured. Here, invisibility becomes protection, a holy privacy. The desert accepts that choice without judgment, question, or hurry. And as you listen, you might feel your own inner door closing gently too, closing on the noise, closing on the endless list, closing on the idea that you must always be reachable. Tonight, you can be unreachable. Tonight, you can be safe. Now pause with me for a moment in the imagined corridor. Feel the coolness, feel the dark. Let your shoulders drop a little more. Here, no one needs your performance. No one needs your perfect answers. Here, Your only job is to be held by the story. And if you are listening tonight from a busy American city, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, where horns and lights never fully stop, then let Maydum offer you a different soundtrack, a soundtrack made of wind, stillness, and very old stone. You can belong here, even if you have never seen the desert, because rest is not a location, it is a permission. If this story is giving you that permission, even a little, leave a gentle comment for yourself. A simple "I'm here" is enough. Your own words can become a small anchor for the next time you need calm. Now let the journey lean forward into the next part. We will follow the soft puzzle more closely, why the greatest shapes might not hold the deepest secret, and why a low, sealed mastaba could be the most careful cradle of a king's long sleep. For now, take a slow inhale, and as you exhale, imagine the desert wind smoothing the surface of the sand, erasing footprints, making everything look untouched, like a fresh page, like a quiet mind, like sleep. Tonight, the desert feels even quieter, like someone has lowered the volume of the whole world. If you are still carrying a little tension in your jaw, let it loosen. If your hands are holding tight to something invisible, let your fingers soften. And if a thought tries to intrude, an email, a plan, a regret, imagine you set it down beside the mastaba like a small stone you can pick up later if you still want it. We return to Mastaba 17 and we step closer to the kind of silence that does not feel empty but protected. Outside, the Maydum Pyramid remains a darker shape against the stars. Its outline is steady, almost reassuring. It reminds you that some things can be massive and still calm, ancient and still present. Yet tonight, we are drawn to the lower structure beside it, the one that does not reach upward but holds inward. In your mind, you move along the mastaba's outer wall and you notice how the stone seems to drink the moonlight rather than reflect it. Limestone has a way of glowing softly when it wants to, but here it chooses modesty. The air is cool and dry, the sand is smooth as if the day's heat has been folded away. Now imagine a lantern, not bright, not harsh, just enough light to reveal a narrow threshold into the mastaba's interior. The lantern's glow trembles slightly like a living thing, and each tremble makes the shadows shift slowly across the stone. You step in. The first thing you feel is the temperature change. Inside, the coolness is steadier, like water that has been sitting in a clay jar all day. It touches your skin and tells your body to slow down. The second thing you notice is how sound behaves. Your breath becomes a small echo and then it fades. Even your thoughts seem quieter, as if the stone is absorbing more than noise, absorbing urgency. You take one slow step, then another. The corridor is not frightening. It is simply narrow, like a hallway in an old house where everyone naturally lowers their voice. Dust floats in the lantern's light, turning the air into a gentle snowfall that never lands. If you have ever walked through a museum late in the afternoon when most visitors have gone, you may recognize this feeling, the sense that history is not performing, only resting. And as you move deeper, you begin to understand something strange and tender about this place. It was not made for frequent footsteps, it was made to be closed. In many tombs, an entrance is built and known, a path is laid, a route designed for ritual visits. Here, the impression is different, less like a house with doors, more like a room that was sealed with intention, as if the builders wanted the resting place to disappear into the world. Imagine stones being set carefully, gaps filled, surfaces leveled until the outside looked almost natural, not dramatic, not elaborate, just complete. A quiet ending. There is comfort in that idea, isn't there? In your own life, you may have wished for certain chapters to close gently, without a loud slam. You may have wished for peace that did not require explanation. The mastaba offers that kind of closure in stone. Now the lantern light slides over the walls, and you see the texture of limestone up close, pale, fine-grained, softly worn by time. Some blocks look almost clean, almost new, as if they were placed here before the desert had time to stain them. They fit in steady layers. The surfaces feel smooth enough that even your imagination can sense it. This is not careless work, it is careful hands. And then, at the end of a chamber, the lantern reveals the darker presence we have been approaching all night. The granite coffer. It does not glitter. It does not announce itself. It sits there like a thought you have been circling, heavy, quiet, undeniable. Granite is a different kind of truth. It is dense. It holds its cold. It refuses to be hurried. If limestone feels like a whisper, granite feels like a vow. You stand before it and let yourself simply notice. The edges are straight, the planes are smooth, the corners feel firm but not sharp. Even in something so heavy, there is a kind of restraint, an elegance that comes from not needing extra decoration. The coffer's surface is cool in your imagination, and that coolness travels up your fingertips into your wrist, into your forearm like a slow river. It is oddly calming the way holding a cold glass can calm a hot mind. And here, in this low mastaba, the presence of that coffer feels like a gentle contradiction. Because nearby, in the huge pyramids, there is no such obvious stone container waiting in the heart. So the soft puzzle becomes clearer. And yet it does not become stressful, becomes intimate. If a king's grand pyramids do not hold a stone sarcophagus, why does this quieter structure, tucked close to Medum, hold a massive granite coffer? You don't have to answer. You only have to feel how the question changes the air. It is like noticing a small light under a door in a dark hallway. You don't need to push the door open. The light itself is enough to keep you curious. Now imagine the people who built this, not as distant figures, but as tired bodies under sun, as hands that learned the feel of stone, as eyes that watched the horizon change color each evening. They carried blocks, they aligned edges, they followed faint guidelines, they rounded corners so that later movement would be gentler, and perhaps, just perhaps, when the final stones were placed and the mastaba was sealed, someone stood in the cooling dusk and felt something close to what you may feel right now: relief. A sense that something precious had been safely put away. There is an ancient kindness hidden in that image, a kindness that says, let rest be protected, let sleep be respected. If you have been living in a world that interrupts you constantly, let this place remind you that uninterrupted quiet is not a luxury. It is a human need. Now the lantern's glow shifts, and you notice the limestone again, so pale, so orderly. There is a thought, soft and plausible, that these stones may have come from the finishing work around the pyramid, stones that were cut and prepared with care, then used here as if to share the pyramid's final purity with the mastaba's deeper stillness. If that is true, it is a beautiful kind of recycling, not practical, but symbolic. A king's monument lending its clean white stone to a hidden resting place. Public grandeur feeding private peace. And that idea can settle into your chest like a warm cup held in both hands, because maybe you have done something similar in your own life. Maybe you have taken a little beauty from your busy day, a song, a cup of tea, a quiet shower, and used it to build a small sanctuary for yourself at night. A few minutes that belong only to you. That is what this mastaba feels like, a sanctuary made of borrowed light. Now, in the hush, let the story ask you something gently. If you could leave one gift for your future self, Something simple, something steady. Would it be an achievement? Or would it be a place to rest? No need to decide. Let your body answer by relaxing a little more. The granite coffer remains closed. It does not reveal what it held. It does not offer certainty. Yet its presence alone suggests that someone long ago believed in the power of quiet containment. And perhaps that is the soft discovery tonight. Sometimes what matters most is not what we can prove, but what we can sense. The sense that care was placed here. The sense that silence was chosen as protection. The sense that even kings with all their monuments might have wanted something as ordinary and as precious as a safe sleep. As you listen, the lantern light begins to dim in your imagination, not because it is going out, but because your eyes are adjusting. The chamber feels less like a place to inspect and more like a place to breathe. You can step back slowly. You can let the coffer remain a quiet shape in the dark. You can let the question remain unanswered without anxiety. Because not every mystery needs to be solved to be soothing. Some mysteries are like lullabies, repeating, gentle, familiar in their unknown. And if tonight your own life contains questions you can't answer yet, let this Mastaba teach you a softer way to hold them. You can set them down, you can seal them for the night. You can trust that morning does not require you to have everything figured out. Before you leave the chamber, notice one more small tenderness. Along an edge, the faint memory of a red guideline, a brushstroke meant for builders, not for visitors. It is not art for an audience, it is a quiet instruction. Soften here, curve here, make the stone kinder to the body that passes. In that humble line, you can almost feel a person thinking ahead, caring about comfort in a world that could be harsh. And somewhere outside, in the open air near the small temple, you might imagine an offering place, simple, orderly, where gestures were made in silence. Even the direction of those gestures could change from site to site, as if the ancient heart kept learning new ways to bow, new ways to say, "May you be at peace." Here, you are welcome too. Even if you arrived tired, even if you arrived late, you are here in the dark. Now, in the next part, we will follow a few more tender clues, small ritual differences, subtle timing, quiet hints that connect this Mastaba to the closing years of Sneferu's building dreams. We will let those clues glow softly like stars rather than spotlights. For now, breathe in, breathe out, and feel the desert's old patient silence wrapping around you like a calm, cool shawl. Let the story keep dimming the way a lamp dims when you turn the knob slowly, one notch at a time. If you are listening with your eyes open, you can let them soften. If they are already closed, let the darkness behind your eyelids become a friendly place, not a blank one. Imagine it as a warm room in your mind, quiet, safe, and unhurried. Outside, the Maydum Desert is still. The wind has slowed, even the stars seem to breathe quietly. The pyramid remains on the horizon like a steady shadow, but our attention returns to the small, grounded presence of Mastaba 17, its low roofline, its pale stone, its calm refusal to compete with the sky. Tonight we've stepped near the granite coffer and felt its cool, heavy silence. We've noticed the rounded corners, the faint red guidelines, the sense that someone long ago tried to make every edge kinder. Now in this part of our gentle journey, we will notice something even softer. Not a treasure, not a dramatic revelation, just a direction, a small orientation, a quiet choice about where a gesture should face. In the ancient world, gestures mattered. A cup of water placed, a loaf offered, a name spoken. These were not grand speeches. They were simple acts that said, "You are not forgotten." When the living approached a resting place, they did so with care, care that was part ritual, part love, part habit, part hope. So imagine the little offering space again near Madum. Simple, modest, without loud carvings. Picture a flat surface where offerings might have been placed. A point of attention where a person could stand and let their hands move slowly, as if their hands were praying even when their mouth was silent. Now notice which way the gesture turns. In one place connected to Sneferu, the offering arrangement seems to invite the visitor to face one direction, toward a particular side, a particular line of space, a particular conversation between stone and horizon. In another place, the arrangement feels subtly different, as if the ritual chose a slightly different angle of respect. We do not need to map it like engineers. We do not need to draw it in the air. We only need to feel what it suggests. It suggests that the ancient mind was not fixed like a statue. It was learning, adjusting, finding softer ways to hold the sacred. And if you have ever changed a small habit in your own life, placing your phone farther from the bed, dimming the lights earlier, drinking water before sleep, then you already understand how change often arrives. Not with fireworks, but with tiny pivots, a little turn, a different direction. The desert recognizes such pivots. It is always turning the sand, always shifting a dune, always altering the surface without argument. And inside Mastaba 17, the stone seems to carry the same lesson. Subtle choices matter. Now let the offering space become more than history. Let it become a mirror. If you could place one offering to your own tired mind tonight, what would it be? A breath, a kind sentence, a quiet promise that tomorrow can wait? Let the question land softly. You don't have to answer with words. Your body can answer by relaxing another inch. As you listen, imagine the limestone used in Mastaba 17. It is pale, almost clean in the mind's eye, like stone that has not yet been darkened by centuries of wind. The blocks lie in careful layers, aligned with a steady hand. There is something deeply soothing about those layers because they feel like order, without pressure. Not the order of a schedule, the order of a well-made bed. Some scholars have suggested that parts of the Mastaba were built using limestone associated with the final finishing work around Madum, stone that belonged to a late moment in the project when the pyramid surfaces were being smoothed and perfected. Whether or not every detail can be proven, the feeling of it remains gentle. The Mastaba carries the atmosphere of late work, of a final act, of completion. And completion has a particular emotional flavor. And it is the feeling you get when you finally put down a task you've been holding too long, when you say, enough for today, when you close the laptop, when you turn off the light. If your life has been full of beginnings, new worries, new responsibilities, new demands, then let this Mastaba teach you about endings that don't hurt, endings that are soft, endings that are careful, endings that are sealed not with anger, but with tenderness. Now imagine again that this Mastaba had no obvious built entrance. It was like a room designed to become invisible. That invisibility itself becomes a form of protection. And the granite coffer inside becomes even more meaningful in that context. Because a coffer is not just an object, it is a statement. Something is being kept. Something is being held. Not necessarily for curiosity, but for peace. There is a calming thought hidden here. Maybe the ancient builders understood that the safest place is not always the most impressive one. Maybe they understood that safety can look like simplicity. If you have ever felt safest in a small room rather than a large one, you know this. A small room can feel like an embrace. A large room can feel like exposure. The Mastaba, low and sealed, feels like an embrace. Now we let ourselves consider a soft possibility, one that does not need to become a headline. What if Sneferu's pyramids were not meant to hold the final body in the way later people assume? What if their purpose was symbolic, cosmic, public? Great shapes meant to speak with the sun, the horizon, and time itself? And what if the true act of sleep was kept elsewhere, quieter, closer to the ground, protected by uncertainty? And this idea does not need to be proven tonight to be soothing. It can simply be held like a warm stone in your palm because it touches something human. We build big things to be seen, but we rest in small places to be safe. We post photos, we attend meetings, we smile in public. But at night, we return to the quiet room where we don't have to perform. The ancient king too might have had a public face and a private longing, and that longing might have sounded very simple. Let me sleep without interruption. If you've spent your life being interrupted by alarms, by demands, by your own restless thoughts, then this longing is something you can feel in your bones. Now, imagine the desert outside again. The sand has cooled. The pyramid stands like a dark sail on a sea of night. Mastaba 17 sits beside it like a closed eye. And somewhere between them, in the quiet air, the story's soft lantern glows. Sometimes the greatest mystery is not where is the answer? Sometimes the greatest mystery is, why do we need the answer to rest? You are allowed to rest even without certainty. You are allowed to sleep even if something remains unresolved. In fact, sleep is often what allows the mind to stop gripping and start healing. If tonight you can loosen your grip just a little, the story is doing its work. Here, no one rests alone. Every listener is a small light in the dark, and your presence, yes, yours, adds warmth to this quiet corner of the night. If you'd like, leave a gentle comment. Where are you listening from tonight? Not because you must, but because it can be comforting to know there are other awake hearts scattered across the map, all breathing slowly with the same story. Now let us return once more to the offering space. Picture a visitor long ago, an ordinary person, not a famous name. Someone who carried water in a simple vessel. Someone who walked in the late afternoon when the heat softened. They approached the quiet stone, placed the offering, and stood for a moment in silence. They might have felt the wind on their cheek. They might have heard their own heartbeat. They might have felt the strange comfort of standing beside something that would outlast them. And then perhaps they turned their bodies slightly, facing the direction the offering place suggested. A small turn, a small alignment. The tiny movement is the kind of thing history rarely records, but it is the kind of thing the soul remembers, because it is the movement of respect, the movement of love, the movement of letting go. And tonight, you can make that movement too, not with your body, but with your attention. You can turn away from the noise. You can face the quiet. You can offer yourself permission to be held by the night. Sometimes, when we are tired, we do the opposite of what we need. We reach higher, we build louder, we chase proof. But rest asks for the small emotion. It asks for a gentle turn, like turning your face toward the cool side of the pillow, like turning your attention toward one slow breath. In the ancient offering space, that turn was a ritual. In your bedroom tonight, it can be a ritual too. As you inhale, imagine placing a small cup of water beside your heart. As you exhale, imagine placing a small loaf of warmth beside your mind. Nothing grand, nothing perfect, just enough. And if a worry returns, let it return like wind, and let it pass like wind. You are safe to be unfinished tonight, and the night will still hold you, gently, all the same. In the next part, we will let the soft puzzle deepen. We will look at how later generations carried Sneferu's memory forward, how certain shapes, certain rituals, certain architectural whispers returned again and again like a refrain in a lullaby. And we will ask very gently what it means to be remembered and what it means to be left in peace. For now, breathe in, breathe out. Let the offering be simple. Let the direction be quiet. Let sleep gather around you like cool desert air. The night has become deeper now, the way a lake becomes deeper as you swim away from the shore. If you are still awake in the bright world, let this story dim it for you. If you are already drifting, let these words be soft enough to float past you like clouds. In the Maydum Desert, the air is cool and clean. The wind has slowed to a long, gentle breath. The pyramid stands at a distance, quiet and patient. And Mastaba 17 rests beside it like a sealed lullaby, low, calm, and certain in its silence. Tonight we have been following small clues, not to chase certainty, but to notice care. Rounded edges, pale limestone, a heavy granite coffer that sits in the dark like a promise kept. A ritual space that turns a gesture slightly as if respect has its own direction. Now in this part we step back just a little. Not away from the story, but out to a wider view, because sometimes the most soothing thing is not the close-up detail, but the sense of a long line, a thread, a continuation. You might already feel it, the way the past is not truly past. It presses gently against the present, like the weight of a blanket, not heavy in a frightening way, heavy in a comforting way, the way something real helps the mind stop spinning. Imagine standing between the pyramid and the mastaba, letting both shapes share the same night sky. One rises upward as if it wants to speak to the sun and the horizon. The other stays low as if it wants to speak to the earth and the quiet dark. Two different languages, one rain, one human heart behind them. Sneferu's name is carried forward in books and stones, but tonight we do not need to hold it like a fact. We can hold it like a feeling, the feeling of a person reaching for permanence, then choosing privacy. The feeling of someone learning over a lifetime what kind of shelter truly matters. If you've lived long enough to change your mind about what matters, you understand him already. Maybe you once chased applause, then later you preferred peace. Maybe you once wanted to be seen, then later you wanted to be held. Maybe you built tall days and then you began to value quiet nights. That is the human arc. From proving to resting. From performing to being. From noise to breath. Now the desert offers us a soft discovery, one that arrives like a warm cup, not like a shock. Long after Sneferu, later kings and builders looked back. They did not forget him. They returned to his shapes the way a tired mind returns to a familiar song. They echoed his choices, certain angles, certain arrangements, certain ways of placing stone so that it felt both strong and calm. You can imagine it like this. A young architect, generations later, walking through an older site. He runs his hand along limestone that has been warmed by sun and cooled by night. He notices the way the blocks meet. He notices the quiet dignity of the form. And something in him settles as if he has found a stable rhythm to borrow. Not to copy without thought, but to continue a conversation. We are like that too, you and I. We borrow rhythms from people we love. We borrow phrases. We borrow ways of breathing when life becomes too much. We inherit comfort, sometimes without realizing it. In the Old Kingdom, later pyramids grew in size and ambition. At Giza, the horizon would one day hold shapes that feel almost unreal to the modern eye, monuments that seem to belong to dreams. But even there, the spirit of earlier experiments and earlier care remained. Ideas matured, silences deepened. The desire to protect sleep became more careful. And when you step back far enough, you can feel that the story of pyramids is not only about stone, it is about the human nervous system. It is about our desire to make something steady when life itself is not steady. It is about our fear of being forgotten and our longing to be safe. If you could leave behind one thing that would outlast you, what would you want it to be? A structure others can see, or a kindness others can feel? You don't have to answer, just notice how your chest responds to the question. Sometimes the body knows before the mind does. Now imagine how memory works, not like a textbook, more like sand. Some memories are sharp, like stones you can pick up. Other memories are soft and shifting, like dunes. You think you remember one detail clearly, and then the wind of time moves it. You think you have forgotten something, and then a smell or a song brings it back. The desert has been practicing this for millennia. It hides, it reveals, it smooths, it preserves. A mastaba can vanish beneath sand and then return, decades later, as if the earth itself has decided to open a small window. A pyramid can lose its smooth casing and yet remain stubborn and calm, its core still holding the shape of intention. Time changes the surface, but not always the meaning. And that is where the story becomes deeply gentle. Because you do not need to keep everything in perfect condition to be worthy of love. You do not need to be flawless to be remembered. You do not need to be polished to be safe. Stone loses its shine. People lose their youth. Life loses its easy simplicity. And still there can be dignity. Still there can be warmth. Still there can be rest. Tonight in the cool air of Maydum, you can let yourself be like the pyramid after sunset, not sparkling, not trying, just present. Now consider the granite coffer again, sealed, heavy, quiet. Whether it held a king or a symbol or a ritual placeholder, it holds something else no matter what. It holds the idea that sleep should be protected, that a final rest deserves care, not chaos. That idea traveled forward. It changed forms. It became more complex in later monuments, more hidden, more guarded. But the root feeling remained the same. And isn't that familiar? In your own life, you may have changed jobs, moved cities, shifted relationships. But the outward form of your days may have changed a dozen times, but your core need, your core longing, stayed the same. To feel safe, to feel seen without pressure, to feel held. Even the most capable adult carries that need quietly, especially the ones who look strong on the outside. So let this story speak to that quiet place in you, the place that does not want to explain itself, the place that just wants to exhale. Now imagine the small temple again, plain, nearly wordless. No crowded carvings, no loud declarations, just space, air, and stone. Sometimes the absence of writing is a kind of kindness. It gives the mind less to grip. In your modern life, there is so much writing. Texts, news, tasks, notifications. Tonight let Maydum offer you a room without words. If you are listening from a place that feels too full, too cluttered with obligations, then let the story do a small cleaning inside you. Not the harsh cleaning of judgment, the gentle cleaning of making room. Room for breath, room for softness, room for sleep. And in that room, let the thread of memory glow. Later generations returned to Sneferu's calm experiments not only because they were impressive, but because they carried a feeling worth inheriting, a feeling that says, build with care, seal with tenderness, let the quiet protect what is precious. That is the soft discovery tonight. History is not only events, history is habits. History is the way one generation teaches the next how to hold life gently. And you are part of that chain too. Even if you don't build monuments, you build small things every day. You build a tone in your household. You build a rhythm in your relationships. You build a way of speaking to yourself in the dark. If tonight you could adjust that inner rhythm by one small degree toward kindness, what would you change? Would you soften your expectations? Would you forgive one mistake? Would you let one worry wait until morning? You don't need to answer out loud. Just let the questions land and then fade. Questions can be pillows too. Here, no one rests alone. Every listener is a quiet witness to the past, and every past story becomes a lantern for the present. If this lantern is helping you even a little, leave a gentle comment for yourself, not for performance, just for warmth. Now the desert wind moves again, barely. It slides along the Mastaba's outer wall, then slips away into open space. The pyramid keeps its silhouette. The Mastaba keeps its hush. The stars keep their patient watch. And perhaps somewhere far beyond Meidum, in another century, another traveler would stand where you are standing now. Eyes lifted, shoulders tired, heart full of ordinary modern thoughts. They might not know the names, the dates, the debates. They might simply feel the hush, and in that hush, feel their own life become simpler for a moment. That is how memory survives, not by perfect knowledge, but by shared calm. A pyramid does not comfort because we can recite numbers. It comforts because it teaches the body to slow down. A Mastaba does not comfort because it solves a puzzle. It comforts because it shows how tenderness can be built. And tonight, you are allowed to receive it, and you, listener, can keep drifting. In the next part, we will turn even more inward. We will explore the idea of the hidden resting place, not as a riddle to solve, but as a lesson in how to protect your own peace. We will let the story become softer, slower, closer to a lullaby. For now, take a slow inhale, and as you exhale, imagine the desert smoothing everything again, footprints, edges, worries, leaving only the calm shape of night. Somewhere between waking and dreaming, the mind becomes softer. It stops demanding proof. It stops chasing outcomes. It begins to accept a gentler truth. That rest can be real even when answers are incomplete. If you're awake, just breathe. You're safe. In the Meidum Desert, the night has turned cool enough that the sand no longer remembers the heat of day. The stars feel closer, as if the sky has leaned down to listen. And the two great shapes, the pyramid and the Mastaba, remain where they have always remained, one rising, one resting. We have been circling a possibility like a moth circling a lantern without touching the flame. A possibility that does not need to become a headline. A possibility that can stay soft. What if the king's true rest was hidden? Not hidden as a trick, not hidden as a threat, but hidden the way a lullaby is hidden inside a quiet room, protected by modesty, protected by ordinary-looking stone, protected by the simple fact that no one can disturb what they cannot easily find. When you imagine Mastaba 17 beside Meidum, you can almost feel the intention of that closeness. Not the closeness of pride, but the closeness of guardianship, as if the Mastaba was placed there to keep watch while the pyramid spoke to the sky. And perhaps, in that pairing, there is a lesson the modern heart can recognize, because your life also has pyramids, not stone pyramids, but tall, visible things, responsibilities that rise high, roles you perform, work that demands your attention, messages that arrive with little alarms and bright screens. The modern world asks you to build upward all day long, but at night, the soul wants a Mastaba, a low, quiet place, a hidden rest. If you could build that hidden rest for yourself, what would you seal outside it? What would you choose not to carry in? Tonight, we can practice. Imagine that your bedroom, your bed, your blanket, your pillow is your own small mastaba. Not a tomb, but a sanctuary. A room meant for healing. A room meant for the kind of sleep that repairs the nervous system, slowly, steadily, without drama. Now imagine a boundary around it, like the enclosure wall at Maydum. A calm line, a gentle perimeter, not a fence of fear, but a boundary of respect. Outside the boundary, the day. Emails, errands, unfinished tasks, old conversations, tomorrow's plans. Inside the boundary, the night, breath, stillness, warmth, and the quiet permission to be human. With each exhale, imagine that boundary becoming clearer, a little more real, a little more protective. And now, imagine the simple act of sealing. In the ancient world, sealing was physical. Stones placed, gaps filled, surfaces smoothed, until a structure became almost invisible. In your modern world, sealing can be simple too. It can be turning your phone face down. It can be letting the news wait. It can be choosing not to solve every question at midnight. It can be whispering to your own mind, "Not now." Some people think peace must be earned, like a paycheck, but the desert teaches another way. Peace can be protected. The mastaba does not argue with the pyramid. It does not compete. It does not reach. It simply holds. And the granite coffer inside, heavy, cool, sealed, becomes a symbol, not of mystery, but of containment. A reminder that not everything needs to be open. Not everything needs to be examined tonight. Some things can be safely closed until morning. If you have worries that feel like they must stay open, like tabs that cannot be shut, imagine placing them gently into the coffer, not as denial, but as care. You are not throwing them away, you are giving them a safe box for the night. Picture the lid, not slamming, just settling. Heavy, sure, quiet. Now, breathe in. And as you breathe out, imagine the lid closing on one worry. Just one, the smallest one perhaps, and feel what happens in your chest when it is contained. You might notice that your breathing becomes easier, that your shoulders drop a fraction, that your forehead smooths. This is the hidden rest, not the absence of problems, but the presence of protection. Outside, the desert wind moves again, slow as a sigh. It slides along limestone, carries a little dust, then disappears. Nothing in the landscape panics, nothing insists on speed. Even time seems to walk barefoot here. In the hush, you can hear another idea, soft, almost tender. Maybe Sneferu built 3 pyramids, not because he was restless, but because he was learning. Learning how to shape permanence, learning how to speak to the horizon, learning how to care for the future. And like any human learning, the process may have included revisions, adjustments, quiet changes of mind. That thought is soothing because it releases the need for perfection. If even kings revised, then you can revise too. You can change, you can soften, you can begin again tomorrow without shame. And perhaps the greatest revision is the one we make at night, the revision from striving to surrender, from holding everything to letting something go. Now imagine walking again along the outer wall of Mastaba 17. Your lantern is dim, your footsteps are slow, your attention is gentle. You do not need to see everything clearly, you only need to feel the calm. The limestone blocks are pale in the lantern light. They look almost clean, as if the stone has been washed by moonlight. The corners feel rounded, kind to the hand. And somewhere, faint as a memory, the red guideline remains. A builder's whisper across time. Soften here. What a beautiful instruction. Not build higher, but soften. Tonight, you can follow it. Now imagine outside again, the small temple at Maydum. Plain, almost wordless. No crowded walls of symbols, no sharp angles of argument. Just a modest space where a person could stand and feel the air cool on their skin. Picture an offering table there, simple and steady, A flat surface for water, for bread, for a handful of flowers gathered from somewhere green along the Nile. The person who comes does not come to prove anything. They come to remember. They come to whisper a name, then let the whisper dissolve into night. Think of how gentle that is. A small act, repeated, not for applause, but for connection. A ritual that says, what mattered still matters. Even if time has moved on, even if the world has changed, even if the one being remembered cannot answer back. And now bring that softness into your own room. If you have a glass of water nearby, let it feel like an offering, not to the past, but to your body. If you have a blanket pulled up, let it feel like bread, simple nourishment. If you have a lamp or a small night light, let it feel like a single flower of warmth. You do not need a grand ceremony. A sip of water can be a ritual. A slow breath can be a ritual. A hand resting gently on your chest can be a ritual. You can even whisper your own name in your mind kindly, the way you might speak to someone you love, not loudly, just enough for your nervous system to hear. You are here and you are safe. Some nights, the mind believes it must stay alert to protect you. It scans, it reviews, it keeps watch. But the offering space teaches another kind of protection. The protection of gentleness. When you give yourself gentleness, the mind can finally stand down. It can finally lower its guard. It can finally let sleep do its quiet work. Soften the breath, soften the jaw, soften the thoughts. If your mind insists on replaying something from today, let it replay like a distant song heard through a wall. You don't have to follow it, you can let it fade. If your mind insists on predicting tomorrow, let tomorrow stay outside the boundary. Tomorrow can wait near the pyramid. Tonight, you rest near the Mastaba. Here, no one rests alone. Even if you are listening in a quiet room by yourself, the night is shared. Across cities and time zones, other listeners are breathing slowly too. Other hearts are looking for the same gentle hush. And the past, in its silent way, keeps offering a hand. If this story is helping you, you can leave a small comment when you are ready. Something simple. Listening from, or good night. Not to wake yourself up, not to perform, just to place a tiny lantern for someone else. Now let us return one last time to the question that began our journey. A king needs one place to rest. So why 3 pyramids? Tonight we do not answer with certainty, we answer with a feeling. Maybe the pyramids were the public face of longing, great shapes that promised eternity. And maybe the Mastaba was the private face of longing, small enough to be protected, quiet enough to be left alone. Public life and private life, visible achievements and hidden healing, the world you show and the world you keep. You, too, have both. And tonight, the hidden one deserves your attention. Now imagine the desert smoothing the surface again. Footprints soften, edges blur. The wind covers everything in a thin veil, like a sheet pulled up to the chin. And in that gentle covering, the Mastaba becomes harder to distinguish from the earth. It becomes part of the landscape. It becomes safe. You can do that too. You can become part of the night for a while. You can stop standing out. You can stop shining. You can simply be. In the next part, we will step into an even quieter reflection, what it means to be remembered, and what it means to be allowed to disappear into peace. We will let the story speak softly about gratitude, about the way time holds us, and about the beauty of ordinary, undramatic rest. For now, breathe in slowly. Breathe out even more slowly. Let the boundary hold, let the coffer close, let the hidden rest begin. The night is older now, deeper, gentler. If you are still awake, that is okay. If you are already drifting, that is also okay. Tonight, nothing needs to be forced. In the Meidum Desert, the sky looks like a vast, quiet ocean. Stars float like small silver boats. The air is cool enough to feel clean in your lungs, and the sand, which was hot and restless in the day, has become still, soft, settled, willing to hold. The pyramid remains in the distance, a calm geometry against the dark. Mastaba 17 rests nearby, lower, quieter, almost shy. Two shapes, two intentions, and somewhere between them a question that does not demand an answer, only a feeling. What does it mean to be remembered? And what does it mean to be allowed to disappear into peace? These questions can sound heavy in the daytime, but at night they become softer, like pillows. They become a way to loosen the mind's grip on the small worries of today. Imagine for a moment that you are standing near the Mastaba's outer wall. Your hand rests on limestone that has cooled under the stars. It feels steady, dry, smooth in places, rough in others. Time has touched it the way waves touch a shoreline, patiently, without anger. And you can feel that patience in your own body, as if the stone is teaching you how to be calm. In the modern world, we often think of being remembered as being seen, as being visible, as leaving a record that can't be ignored. But the ancient world knew something quieter. They knew that memory can also live in repetition, in gentle habits, in small offerings, in the way a person returns to
again and again to a place and stands there, breathing slowly. A name spoken softly can be a monument. A cup of water placed in silence can be a monument. A hand laid on stone, just for a moment, can be a monument. And perhaps that is why the plainness of Meidum feels so soothing. It invites a different kind of remembrance, not the loud kind, the kind that fits inside the chest. Now imagine the long chain of people who lived after Sneferu. Generations who never saw him but still felt the gravity of what he built. They looked back, they borrowed shapes, they echoed forms, not because they needed to worship a single man, but because they recognized a stable rhythm in the stone. It is like a lullaby passed down. You might not remember who first sang it, but the melody remains, the gentle rise and fall.
the promise that the night will hold you. In that way, architecture becomes a kind of memory too. Not memory as information, but memory as atmosphere. The feeling of stepping into a space and suddenly wanting to speak more quietly. The feeling of seeing a smooth plane of limestone and sensing careful hands. The feeling of an ancient place reminding your modern nervous system that it can slow down. And now, let the story turn toward you. You may worry sometimes about how you will be remembered. By your children, if you have them. By your friends. By your co-workers. By the people who share your days. Or you may worry in a different way, that you are already invisible, that your effort goes unnoticed, that you carry more than anyone realizes. Both kinds of worry are human.
Both belong to the same tender place, the place that wants to matter. So tonight, let Meidum offer you a gentler idea. You do not have to be remembered loudly to have mattered. You do not have to be perfectly understood to be loved. You do not have to build pyramids to leave something meaningful behind. Sometimes what we leave behind is a feeling. The feeling of safety someone had around you. The feeling of being listened to. The feeling of a home that was calmer because you were in it. The feeling of kindness that arrived without being asked for. Those are the true monuments, and they are often quiet. Now imagine the Mastaba again as a symbol of that quiet monument, low, sealed, close to the pyramid but not competing with it. A resting place that chose protection over display.
There is a strange comfort in imagining that even a king might have wanted to vanish gently, not to be erased, but to be undisturbed, not to be forgotten, but to be safe. It reminds us that being remembered and being peaceful are not always the same thing. Sometimes they pull in different directions. In the modern world, being remembered can feel like pressure. To post, to achieve, to keep up, to remain visible. But peace asks for the opposite. It asks for permission to stop performing. Permission to close the door, permission to let the day end. Mastaba 17 is like a physical permission slip. A stone letter that says, "You may rest without explanation." Now breathe in slowly, breathe out more slowly, and as you exhale, imagine you are stepping inside your own quiet room, your own hidden rest. A place where no one needs your productivity. A place where you can be loved without being evaluated. In that place, notice your breathing. Notice the space between breaths. That space is your Mastaba. That space is where healing begins. Now let's return to the granite coffer, not to open it, but to honor what it represents, a contained silence, a decision to keep something safe, a weight that does not crush but steadies. If you have thoughts that feel too loud tonight, imagine placing them there, one by one, not with frustration, with care. A worry about money, a worry about health, a worry about someone you love, a worry about time. Place each worry gently into the coffer. Feel your hands release. Feel the lid settle, slowly, heavily, calmly. You can pick them up again later if you must, but tonight let them sleep. Now outside the Mastaba, the desert continues its quiet work. Wind smooths the sand, stars keep watch. Time moves, but without pushing. And this is where gratitude can arrive, softly, without speeches. Gratitude does not have to be dramatic. It can be a small noticing. Noticing that you are here, that you are breathing, that your body is trying to take care of you, even when your mind is tired. Noticing that there is a story in your ears and that you are not alone in the night. Imagine, too, the way the desert itself remembers, not with sentences, but with layers, a thin crust of sand over stone, a faint line where an old wall once stood, a cooler patch of ground that tells you, without speaking, that something was placed here with intention. In the daytime, people come looking for certainty. They bring cameras, questions, bright voices. But at night, the sight returns to its original language, wind, shadow, a slow spill of starlight, and the feeling that the past is not demanding your attention, only offering you a quieter pace. If you are carrying a busy American week in your chest, meetings, traffic, screens, lists, let that week stand outside the enclosure wall for a while. Inside the wall, allow yourself to be simple. One breath in, one breath out, nothing more required. Even your thoughts can be allowed to fade at the edges like footprints softening under sand. And if sleep arrives mid-sentence, let it arrive. You don't have to listen perfectly. The story will keep floating like a boat until you drift away gently. If you'd like, you can think of one small thing you are grateful for. Just one. A cup of water, a warm blanket, a person who texted you something kind, a pet sleeping nearby, a moment in the day when sunlight looked gentle. Hold that one thing like a small candle. You don't have to hold it tightly. Just let it glow. The ancient people who came to offering places knew something about gratitude. They carried simple things, bread, water, flowers, because the simplest things are often the truest. And in the quiet act of offering, they practiced a calm acceptance. Life changes, time moves, and still, we can be tender. Now, if you feel any sadness tonight, let it be allowed too. The desert has room for sadness. It has room for longing. It has room for the soft ache of being human. Stone does not judge emotion. Sand does not rush grief. The night simply holds. So if there is something in your heart that feels heavy, you do not have to push it away. You can place it beside you like a bundle set down on the ground. You can sit with it for one breath, and then gently you can let the story carry you forward again. Here, no one rests alone. Across many homes, many cities, many quiet rooms, other listeners are breathing slowly too. Other hearts are making peace with their own unfinished questions. And the past, in its silent way, is offering companionship. If tonight's story brings you calm, you can leave a gentle comment when you're ready, maybe just a place name, maybe just a small good night, a tiny lantern for someone else. Now the lantern of our story grows softer again. We do not need to stand, we do not need to walk. We can simply sit in the imagination between Pyramid and Mastaba and listen to the desert breathe. And as we listen, the two questions, remembered, peaceful, begin to blend. Because maybe the truest remembrance is not the kind that keeps you awake. Maybe the truest remembrance is the kind that lets you rest. In the next part, we will lower the pace even more. We will let the night become wider, the sentences shorter, the images slower. We will drift toward the final quiet understanding that some of the most beautiful things in life arrive in silence and stay in silence, and that is enough. For now, breathe in, breathe out. Let your body be heavy, let your mind be light. Let the desert keep watch for you. The desert is quieter still now, as if it has learned your breathing and decided to match it. If your eyelids feel heavy, let them be heavy. If your thoughts feel slow, let them be slow. Tonight, slowness is not a problem to fix. It is a door you can walk through. At Maydom, the sky has deepened into a gentle black blue, and the stars look like tiny promises that do not need to be explained. The pyramid stands the way it always stands, silent, patient, unbothered by questions. Mastaba 17 rests beside it, lower, sealed, steady, as if it is holding a secret, not out of drama, but out of kindness. There is a kind of kindness in not forcing an ending. In the modern world, we are trained to finish things. We close loops. We answer messages. We resolve tickets. We keep lists, and we feel a small relief when a task is checked off. We like the click of closure, but the heart does not always heal in straight lines. Sometimes the heart heals in circles. Sometimes it heals by returning gently to the same quiet place until the body remembers it is safe. That is what we are doing tonight. We have been returning to the same shapes. Pyramid, Mastaba. The plain little temple, the offering space, the cool stone. And with each return, something soft has been happening. The mind has been loosening its grip. The shoulders have been dropping. The breath has been widening. This is history as a lullaby, not history as a debate. Now let yourself imagine the sight again in moonlight. The enclosure wall lies low like a calm boundary drawn across sand. Inside that boundary, everything feels slightly slower. The wind itself seems to walk more carefully, as if it does not want to wake anyone. If you were to stand here alone, you might notice that the silence is not empty. It is textured. It has layers. There is the silence of distance, the silence that comes from being far from cities and screens. There is the silence of stone, the silence that comes from weight and age. And there is the silence of intention, the silence that comes from a place built to be left alone. When you listen long enough, those silences begin to feel like blankets. They don't suffocate, they cover, they protect. And that is where the story's gentle truth becomes clearer. We may never know with absolute certainty what happened in every chamber, in every sealed space, under every layer of sand. We may never be able to stand inside the past as cleanly as we stand inside a modern room. Time leaves gaps.
Wind erases, human hands disturb, records vanish, and still something remains. Care remains. The rounded corners remain, even if only in traces. The pale limestone remains, even if dulled by dust. The granite coffer remains heavy and calm, even if the story of what it held is not fully spoken. And perhaps the soft discovery of this night is that care can be felt even without full explanation. If your life contains unanswered things, an old conversation you never finished, a relationship that ended without closure, a question about your future that no one can answer yet, then you already know how it feels to carry a gap. Gaps can ache, they can itch at the mind, they can keep you awake at night. But the desert offers a different way to hold a gap, not as a wound you must pick at, as a space you can lay down beside.
Imagine placing your unanswered things on the sand near the Mastaba, not throwing them away, just setting them down. Let them rest there like bundles wrapped in cloth. Let the night watch them for you. Because the truth is this, your nervous system does not need perfect certainty to rest. It needs safety, it needs steadiness, it needs permission. And safety can come from many places. It can come from a warm blanket, it can come from a familiar voice, it can come from a ritual you repeat, it can come from remembering that you have survived every day before this one, and you do not need to solve the whole future tonight. Now imagine the granite coffer again, the cool surface, the heavy lid, the feeling of containment. In the daytime, closed can sound like denial, but at night, closed can sound like protection. A door closed against noise, a lid closed over worry, a boundary drawn around rest. What if closure is not something you force, but something you grant? Grant yourself a small closure tonight, the closure of the day, the closure of the list, the closure of the voice that says you must keep working. You can reopen all of it tomorrow if you choose, but tonight you are allowed to be finished. Outside, the pyramid keeps its high silhouette. It is visible, even in darkness. It teaches one kind of permanence, the permanence of being seen. But the Mastaba teaches another kind, the permanence of being held. And it might surprise you how deeply the body responds to that second kind, because so much of modern life is about visibility. You show up, you present, you perform competence, you respond quickly, you prove again and again that you are capable. Even rest can become performative, apps tracking sleep, watches measuring cycles, charts, scores. We try to turn the night into another achievement, but the Mastaba does not measure, it does not score, it simply shelters. And perhaps tonight you can choose shelter over score. If you could trade one kind of success for one kind of peace, what would you trade? Again, no need to answer. Let the question dissolve like breath on cool air. Now let us return once more to the offering space, but this time imagine it as a practice for your own heart. The ancient visitor arrives with water and bread. They do not rush. They do not multitask. They stand, they place, they pause. They might look at the pyramid, then back toward the Mastaba. They might feel the wind on their skin. They might think of someone they miss. They might whisper a name and then let the whisper go. That pause, simple, human, unrecorded, is the kind of moment the body craves today. So let your listening become an offering. Offer your attention to the breath. Offer your attention to the coolness of the night. Offer your attention to the idea that you are allowed to be gentle with yourself. If a thought arrives, greet it like a traveler at the gate. You don't have to invite it inside, you can nod and let it pass on. Now the story itself can begin to slow further. You may notice that the images are becoming simpler. The sentences are becoming shorter. This is on purpose. We are walking towards sleep. Imagine the wind smoothing the sand again, a soft sweep. a soft sweep. Each sweep erases the sharpness of footprints. Each sweep makes the surface more even. Imagine your mind doing the same. Smoothing, erasing the sharp edges of the day. And in that smoothing, something tender appears, the beauty of unanswered things. Because some questions are not meant to be answered quickly. Some questions are meant to accompany us quietly while we grow. They remind us that life is larger than our control. They remind us that humility can be peaceful. They remind us that the world holds mysteries and we can still sleep. Sneferu's monuments remain and debates may continue in daylight. But at night, the stone does not argue. It simply stands. It simply rests. You can do that too. You can stop arguing with yourself. You can stop rehearsing. You can stop predicting. You can simply be a person under a sky. And if you are listening from a busy apartment with distant traffic and the faint glow of streetlights, imagine Maidum offering you an older kind of night. A night without screens. A night where the loudest thing is a breeze. A night where the stars feel unhurried. Long ago, people stood here too with ordinary tired bodies. They carried water, they carried bread, they carried the weight of their own days, just as you carry yours. And when they came to these stones, they did not have to prove anything. They only had to arrive. Picture one of them, no famous name, just a person at the end of a day. They step into cooler air, they pause, they listen. Their shoulders drop the way your shoulders can drop now. Their breathing slows the way your breathing can slow now, and the desert receives them without question. Let your body borrow that permission. Let your tongue rest. Let the space between your eyebrows soften. Let your breath lengthen by a single heartbeat. If your mind wants to count, to plan, to solve, give it one simple job instead. Follow the air in, follow the air out, in, out. And notice how with each cycle, the night feels wider. Your bed or your chair feels more supportive, and everything can wait until morning, as if the earth itself is saying quietly, I've got you. If tonight's story has brought you even a small sense of calm, you can leave a gentle comment when you're ready, a place name, a simple good night, a small lantern for someone else. But for now, you don't have to do anything. Just breathe, inhale, exhale, let the breath be the only schedule. In the next part, we will lower the pace even more. We will let the desert become darker, softer. We will let the story become closer to a lullaby, more silence, fewer thoughts, more gentle drifting. We will move toward the final quiet lesson, that the most beautiful things often arrive without noise, and the deepest rest is sometimes the one that no one sees. For now, stay here between Pyramid and Mastaba, between being seen and being sheltered, between the day and the night. Breathe in, breathe out, and let the unanswered things sleep beside you. The desert is almost silent now. If you are still awake, notice how different your body feels compared to the first minutes of this story. The muscles may be softer, the breath may be slower, the mind may be less sharp at the edges, like a pencil that has finally been set down. At Maidum, the sky holds its stars the way a calm hand holds small beads. No squeezing, no hurry, just steady presence. The pyramid is still a dark triangle of intention. The Mastaba is still a low, sealed hush. But the story is beginning to move downward, not outward. Downward into quiet, downward into rest, downward into the place where the day cannot follow you. In the modern world, so much of life is upward. Upward ambition, upward volume, upward speed. Even our thoughts try to climb into plans, into worries, into the next thing. But sleep is not an upward motion. Sleep is a slow descent, like a feather settling, like sand falling through fingers, like twilight sinking into the horizon. So tonight, let your inner world do what the desert does. Let it descend without resistance. Imagine once more the boundary wall around Medum. It lies low across the sand, a simple line that separates noise from hush. Outside the wall, the world continues. Distant cities, bright screens, ticking clocks. Inside the wall, time feels thicker and kinder, as if it has decided to slow itself for you. Step inside again, gently, and let the wall become a symbol of permission. Inside this boundary, you do not have to be impressive. Inside this boundary, you do not have to be ready. Inside this boundary, you do not have to solve. You only have to breathe. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. Now imagine you are walking a short path from the pyramid to Mastaba 17, and with each step, your mind loses a little interest in being busy. The sand is cool. The air is cool. The night does not demand that you prove anything. You arrive at the Mastaba and sit down, leaning against its outer wall. The limestone feels cool through fabric. The steadiness of the stone becomes your steadiness. You can feel how the wall holds its shape without effort, and your body begins to copy that lesson. Hold without strain, rest without guilt. Somewhere in the distance, a faint wind moves across the sand. It is so soft it almost feels like imagination. It does not carry words, it carries only the sound of the world settling. If you have ever listened to rain on a roof, you know that kind of settling. The mind stops searching. The body begins to trust. Sleep becomes possible. Now the story itself begins to change. It becomes less like a road and more like a cradle. The images grow simpler. The sentences grow calmer. The spaces between thoughts grow wider. We can let ourselves revisit the granite coffer one last time, but in a new way, not as a mystery, not as an object, but as a practice. Imagine the coffer as the safest container you have ever known, a place where you can place anything that feels too heavy for midnight. Not to erase it, but to hold it until you have more light. If a worry is still awake in you, choose one, just one. Maybe it is a work worry. Maybe it is a money worry. Maybe it is a worry about someone you love. Maybe it is the old ache of something you cannot change. Now in your mind, carry that worry in both hands, the way you might carry a bowl filled with water. Carry it carefully, not because it is fragile, but because you are learning tenderness. Bring it to the granite coffer, place it inside, feel your hands release, and then imagine the lid settling into place. Not slamming, not locking with fear, just closing with calm weight, like the end of a chapter. The coffer is closed, the worry can sleep. Now, breathe in, breathe out. Notice the space that opens up when even one worry is allowed to rest. In that space, the desert seems wider, the stars seem slower, your bed feels warmer, your mind feels less crowded. This is what the ancients understood in their own way, that rest is not only an absence of movement, but the presence of containment, the presence of boundaries, the presence of a protected interior. Mastaba 17 was a protected interior. Your night can be a protected interior too. Now imagine the pyramid again. It rises, visible and steady. It is like the part of you that the world sees, the part that shows up, the part that works, the part that holds things together. And imagine the Mastaba beside it, low, quiet, sealed. It's like the part of you that the world does not see, the part that feels, the part that remembers, the part that needs tenderness. Both are real, both belong, but only one needs your attention. Right now, tonight, you return to the hidden part. If you could whisper one kind sentence to the part of you that no one sees, what would it be? You do not have to answer. The whisper can remain unspoken, tucked into your chest like a warm coin. The body will still understand. Now the wind moves again, and the sand responds. A thin veil of dust slides across the surface, smoothing sharp marks, softening lines. It is the desert's nightly ritual. Erase what does not need to be remembered. Preserve what is steady. Let your mind copy that ritual. Erase the sharpness of the day. Preserve the steadiness of your breath, in, out. If a thought returns, let it return like a distant footstep. You can hear it without following it. You can notice it without climbing into it. In the distance, the pyramid stands without asking for your attention. The Mastaba rests without asking for your effort. The whole landscape is offering you a single message. It is safe to stop. Safe to stop scrolling. Safe to stop rehearsing. Safe to stop holding your face in a polite expression. Safe to stop bracing. Let your jaw loosen. Let your tongue rest. Let your shoulders sink into the support beneath you. Now we begin to drift closer to the lullaby part of the story, where meaning is less important than sensation, where the voice is less about telling and more about rocking. Imagine the small temple near Meidum again, plain, quiet, almost wordless. In your mind, it is lit only by moonlight and the faint glow of stars. The offering place sits still. No hands are there now, no visitors. Only emptiness and the soft holiness of emptiness. Sometimes emptiness is not loneliness. Sometimes emptiness is relief. If you have been surrounded by noise in your calendar, noise in your head, then emptiness can feel like cool water on a warm forehead. Let that relief wash through you. Now, if sleep is approaching, you may feel it in small signs. The breath becomes deeper without effort. The limbs feel heavier. The thoughts become less connected, like leaves drifting apart on water. Let those signs be welcome. You do not have to keep the story together in your mind. You do not have to remember every image. You can let the words become a soft background like wind. And still, one gentle truth remains, floating at the center of it all. The most beautiful things often arrive in silence. The desert does not need applause. Stone does not need validation. Night does not need explanation. And you, listener, do not need to earn rest by finishing every thought. You can simply rest. Here, no one rests alone. Across many homes, many cities, many quiet bedrooms, other listeners are letting their minds descend too. Their breaths are slowing, their shoulders are softening. The world is quieter, not because the world changed, but because the nervous system is finally receiving the message. You are safe. If you are still awake enough to hold one small thought, let it be this. Tonight, you did not have to solve anything. Tonight, you only had to arrive. Now let the story drift even lower, as if we are stepping down gentle stairs made of sand. Each step is a breath. Each breath is a little heavier. Each heaviness is a little kinder. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And if the desert could speak, it would speak in this slow rhythm. It would not use many words. It would use patience. It would use stillness. It would use the simple proof of its own breathing. So breathe with it. Let the pyramid remain in the distance. Let the mastaba remain beside you. Let the coffer remain closed. Let the night remain wide. And let yourself descend. Now notice the small sensations that belong to sleep. The weight of your blanket or the weight of air on your skin. The quiet pulse in your wrists. The way your feet feel farther away than they did a few minutes ago, as if your body is becoming a soft landscape of its own. Imagine the desert sand as a gentle tide. It moves in tiny waves.
It comes in, it goes out. Your breath can match it in and out, in and out. With every exhale, imagine the world becoming a little darker, not in a scary way, but in a comforting way, like lights dimming before a calm film begins. The bright corners fade first, then the sharper edges, then even the need to think. If a memory arrives, let it arrive softly. If a plan arrives, let it arrive softly. You can place both on the sand and watch the wind blur them until they feel distant. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be human. And if a small flame of effort is still awake inside you, thank it. It has been trying to protect you. Then tell it gently. You can rest now. The desert keeps watch, the stones keep watch, the night keeps watch, and you can let go tonight. The night is very quiet now. If you are still awake,
You do not need to worry about it. You are not doing anything wrong. Some nights simply take their time, the way the desert takes its time. You can let your body listen without forcing it to fall asleep. At Maydum, the air feels clean, cool and thin, as if the stars have gently filtered it. The sand is smooth under moonlight. The pyramid remains on the horizon, a calm outline, steady as a slow thought. Mastaba, 17, rests beside it, lower, sealed, simple, like a closed hand that is not gripping, only holding. Tonight, we have walked through a question and found that it does not need to bite. A king, 3 pyramids, a quiet mastaba, a granite coffer, a place with no easy door, a mystery that stayed soft, and now the story becomes even softer. We do not need to walk anymore. We can sit in the hush between stone and sky and let the desert do what it has always done: breathe, smooth, and let go. Inhale, exhale. Imagine the wind moving slowly across the sand, not as a gust, but as a gentle brush. It sweeps the surface once, then again. Each sweep makes the desert look newly made, as if the day never happened. The wind does not keep a record of footprints. It does not hold grudges against marks. It simply smooths what can be smoothed. Let your mind borrow that skill. If your day left sharp marks in you, an unpleasant conversation, a deadline, a worry, a small disappointment, let the wind of your breath sweep over those marks now. Inhale and feel the air enter like cool water. Exhale and feel it leave like a long sigh. The pyramid stands without movement. It does not explain itself. It does not apologize. It does not ask to be understood. It simply remains. The mastaba too remains, quiet and private, close to the earth, as if it knows that sleep does not happen in the sky. Sleep happens in sheltered places. Sleep happens where the body feels safe. And you, listener, are learning that safety too. Not the safety of having every answer, the safety of being held. There is a softness in the thought that the most protected rest might be the least visible one, that the most cared-for place might look ordinary, that the most peaceful ending might be the one that does not announce itself. In modern life, we are taught to announce everything, to explain, to justify, to show our work, to prove we belong. Even when we are exhausted, we keep the inner lights on, as if darkness would be dangerous. But the ancient stones say something different. Darkness can be gentle, silence can be kind, a sealed room can be protection, not loneliness. So tonight, allow darkness to be your friend, allow silence to be your blanket, allow the unfinished parts of your life to rest without your attention for a while. If a thought rises, you can greet it softly. You can say in your mind, "I see you." And then you can let it lie down on the sand. The wind will handle it. Time will handle it. Morning will handle it. You do not have to handle everything at midnight. Now imagine, one last time, the granite coffer in Mastaba 17. Cool, heavy, still. It is the opposite of panic. It is the opposite of rushing. It teaches the body a simple lesson. You can contain what is too much. So if there is one worry still pacing inside you, invite it to slow down. Picture it as a small animal, tired, alert, trying to protect you. Thank it, and then guide it toward the coffer. Let it step inside. Let it curl up in the cool dark. Let the lid settle, not with force, with weight, with calm. And now the worry can sleep. Inhale, exhale. Outside, the stars stay bright, but gentle. They do not flash, they do not shout, they simply glow. A few are brighter than others, and that is okay. The sky makes room for all of them, the faint ones and the strong ones. Your life is like that too. Some days you shine, some days you are faint. You are still part of the sky. Tonight, you do not need to shine. You only need to be. Imagine the small temple near Maydum again, plain, quiet, almost wordless. The offering place is empty now, and the emptiness is peaceful. No one is asking questions, no one is counting, no one is judging, only the quiet remains. Sometimes, this is what the nervous system wants most, a space where nothing is demanded. So let your room become that space, let your bed become that space, let your breath become that space. If you are listening from a city where sirens and traffic never fully stop, imagine the desert placing a soft hand over those sounds, turning them down, not erasing them completely, just lowering them until they become background, until they become distant, until they no longer feel like a command. Inhale, exhale. Now think of the word enough, not as a criticism, but as a blessing. Enough for today, enough thinking, enough carrying, enough proving you have done enough. And if you did not do everything you wanted, that is still okay. The desert teaches a long view. There will be more days, there will be more chances, there will be more mornings. Tonight, there is only rest. In the distance, the pyramid silhouette feels like a lighthouse that does not blink. It is simply there. And the Mastaba's low outline feels like a sheltered cove. Between them, the sand lies flat and calm. If you could choose which place to live in right now, the lighthouse or the cove, you already know the answer. Tonight, you live in the cove. Tonight, you are sheltered. Now, let the story become even simpler. Breathe in, breathe out. Let your shoulders sink, let your tongue rest, let your eyes soften. Let your forehead smooth. If your thoughts become jumbled, that is fine. Jumbled thoughts are often a sign that sleep is near. They are like leaves drifting away from the branch. You do not have to gather them. You can let them float. Now imagine the desert wind again, smoothing the sand in slow passes. One pass. Another pass. Each pass makes the surface softer. Each pass makes the marks of the day less sharp. Your breath can do the same. One inhale, one exhale, again, again. And somewhere in the quiet, you might feel a small gratitude for your own body, this body that kept you going through the day, that carried you through worry, that did its best. It may be tired, but it is still trying to take care of you. You can thank it gently, like you would thank an old friend. Thank you for holding me. Thank you for breathing. Thank you for staying. If sleep comes now, let it come. If it comes later, that is fine. Now imagine you step slightly away from the stones, not because you are leaving them, but because you are letting them stay where they belong. Quiet, undisturbed, complete in their own silence. Your feet move slowly across the cool sand. There is no hurry. The desert does not cling. It lets things fade gently, the way sleep lets the edges of a room blur. With each step, the pyramid becomes smaller in the distance, and the mastaba becomes more like a low shadow blending into the earth. You can let the edges of your day blur too. You can let the edges of your worries soften. You can let the sharpness dissolve. Somewhere in the night, a breeze touches a small patch of dry grass. It makes a sound so quiet you could mistake it for your own breath. A grain of sand slides, a distant bird settles, tiny sounds that say the world is safe enough to sleep. And if you have been carrying loneliness or overthinking or a tired feeling that no one sees how much you try, let the story offer you simple companionship. Across the map, other listeners are breathing slowly too. Different rooms, different lives, the same human need to be held, to be soothed, to be allowed to stop. Here, no one rests alone, not because we can touch each other, but because we can share a rhythm. Inhale, exhale. A shared rhythm can be a kind of community, and community can be a kind of shelter. Now let the stars become softer behind your eyelids, like scattered light on dark velvet. Some are sharp, some are blurred, and the blur is beautiful. The blur is the beginning of dreaming. Notice the weight of your arms, the weight of your legs, the gentle pull of gravity. Gravity asks nothing. It simply holds you to the earth. Mastaba. 17 understood gravity. It stayed low. It accepted weight. It became a place where rest could be protected. Let gravity protect you now. Let the bed protect you. Let the night protect you. Inhale, exhale. And if your thoughts are still loud, imagine turning down a dial. Lower, lower. Until the loudness becomes a distant hum, and then becomes something you no longer need to follow. You are allowed to drift. You are allowed to forget. You are allowed to be carried by your breath. If a worry tries to return, picture it again at the granite coffer. Cool, heavy, calm. Place the worry inside like setting down a coat after a long day. Let the lid settle. Let the worry sleep. Let you sleep too. Now the story begins to prepare its final quiet landing. In the next part, we will let go of nearly everything, facts, questions, even images, and we will guide you into a soft ending that feels like the last few moments before sleep, when the mind stops reaching and simply floats. For now, stay here, between pyramid and mastaba, between the visible and the hidden, between the day and the night. Inhale, exhale, and let the desert learn your breath. Now the desert is almost only breath. If you are still awake, you can let the words come and go like wind passing through tall grass. You don't have to hold on to anything. You don't have to remember the details. You don't have to be a good listener. You only have to be here, softly, the way stone is here, the way night is here. At Meidum, the stars have settled into their places. The air is cool and steady. The pyramid is a calm shadow, and Mastaba 17 is an even calmer shadow beside it, low to the earth, sealed into quiet. Somewhere in the distance, the Nile is only a memory tonight, and the modern world is only a faint hum beyond imagination. We have walked far without moving. We began with a gentle question. 1 king, 3 pyramids. We followed the question, not into noise, but into stillness, into pale limestone, rounded corners, a plain temple, an offering space, a granite coffer that holds the idea of protection. And slowly, with each return, the question became less like a problem and more like a lullaby. Because some mysteries are meant to soothe, they remind us that the world is larger than our schedules, larger than our inboxes, larger than our worries. They remind us that life has depth, and that depth can be calm. Tonight you don't have to solve anything. You can let the pyramid remain visible, and let the mastaba remain hidden, and let the truth be simple. Both forms belong. The tall monument belongs to daylight, to ceremony, to the part of us that stands in public and does what must be done. The low-ceiled shelter belongs to night, to privacy, to the part of us that heals without an audience. So tonight, choose the low shelter. Choose the hidden rest. If your mind is still working, picture it like a lantern held too high. Gently lower it, bring it closer to the ground. Let the light become softer, let the shadows become kinder. The desert does not need bright light to be beautiful. It becomes most beautiful when it is dim. Inhale, exhale. If there is a thought you have been carrying all day, you can place it down now. Imagine setting it on the cool sand near the Mastaba's wall. It doesn't disappear, it simply rests, and the sand will hold it for a while. Inhale, exhale. Now imagine the old builders again, not as names in a book, but as human beings who felt tired, who drank water, who looked up at the sky at the end of a day. Imagine them smoothing limestone, rounding an edge, drawing a faint red line to guide a gentler curve. They were not only building for power, they were building for quiet. They were making a place where rest could be protected from the sharpness of the world. And in that thought, a soft kindness reaches you across time. Because you too have been building all your life. Not pyramids, perhaps, but days, weeks, seasons. You have built routines, you have built relationships, you have built a way of keeping yourself going, and sometimes in the building, you have forgotten the other skill, the skill of sealing a door at night so that the world can't follow you in. Tonight, you can practice that skill. Seal the day. Seal the list. Seal the argument you keep replaying in your head. Seal the worry that keeps pacing. Not forever. Just for the night. Imagine the granite coffer again. Cool, heavy, calm. Bring one worry to it, the smallest one you can choose. Place it inside. Feel your hands release. Feel the lid settle with gentle weight. No slam, no fear. Just quiet containment. The worry can sleep, and you can sleep too. Now let the desert teach you its simplest method. It does not fight the dark. It welcomes it. It lets heat leave. It lets the air turn cool. It lets the day dissolve. You can do that too. Let the heat of effort leave your forehead. Let the tightness leave your jaw. Let the last task of the day fall away from your shoulders. If you notice your tongue pressing against the roof of your mouth, let it rest. If you notice your hands curled or clenched, let your fingers open, just a little. If you notice your eyes trying to focus even behind closed lids, let's let them unfocus. You are safe. The who tonight is simple. It is you, and it is the quiet past, meeting in the same breath. The what is also simple. Rest, not as an achievement, but as a gentle return. The where is medum in your imagination, and your bed in your real life, stitched together by a calm voice. The when is this moment, this night, this small pocket of time you are allowed to keep. The why is kindness, because your body deserves to be held. And the how is breath, softness, and permission. Inhale, exhale. Now imagine the plain temple again. No busy carvings, no loud walls, only open space and moonlight. Imagine an offering table there, empty now, waiting without pressure. Emptiness can be a gift. It says, nothing is required. It says, you can stop. If your mind tries to rush ahead to tomorrow, imagine tomorrow standing far away, near the pyramid, in the daylight. Tonight belongs to the Mastaba. Tonight belongs to the hidden room. Tonight belongs to the part of you that does not need to be seen. If you are listening from a busy American city with distant traffic and a refrigerator hum and a neighbor's late footsteps, let those sounds become like desert wind. Not enemies, just movement. You don't have to follow them. You don't have to react. You can let them pass across the surface of your attention and fade. Inhale, exhale. Now very gently, imagine a slow walk away from the stones, not because you are leaving them, but because you are letting them remain undisturbed. Your footsteps are light. The sand is cool. The horizon is wide. With each step, the pyramid becomes smaller, and the mastaba becomes a low shadow blending into earth. This is what rest looks like. Edges blur, urgency fades, the mind stops gripping. If you'd like, remember one small kindness from today. It can be tiny: a warm drink, a familiar song, a patch of sunlight, a message that didn't demand anything. Hold that kindness for a moment, like a pebble warmed in your palm. Then let it rest beside you. You don't have to squeeze it. You don't have to turn it into a lesson. You can simply let it be warm. And if today held something painful, you don't have to wrestle with it tonight. You can acknowledge it with a quiet nod. You can say softly, "Yes, that was hard." And then you can let it sit outside the enclosure wall until morning. The night is not asking you to be brave. The night is asking you to be soft. Before the last words fade, linger with one more image. Imagine the desert at its deepest hour, when even the wind seems to nap. The sky is not only dark, it is gentle, like soft fabric. Starlight falls on the sand in thin, quiet threads, and the sand receives it without shining back too brightly. Everything is modest. Everything is enough. In that modest light, you can picture Mastaba 17 as a small shelter for the whole human story. People arrive with questions, and the stone does not answer with argument. It answers with steadiness. It answers with the simple fact that it has been here through countless nights, and that every night eventually settles. Let your own body take that lesson. Feel the weight of your head sinking a little deeper into the pillow. Feel the shoulders widening as if the chest has more room. Feel the belly soften as if it is finally safe to let go. If you notice any tight place behind the knees, around the hips, between the shoulder blades, send a slow exhale there, the way you would send warm water over a tired hand. Now imagine the enclosure wall again, and imagine it doing one kind thing. It keeps the day outside. The day can wait. The emails can wait. The unfinished conversations can wait. Nothing bad happens when you let them wait for a few hours. In fact, the world often becomes kinder when you sleep. And if a small fear whispers, "What if I forget something?" answer it gently. "I can remember tomorrow. I can handle tomorrow with more rest. Tonight, I choose quiet." Somewhere in your mind, place a tiny lantern, very small, very warm. Not a bright light, just a comforting glow. Let that lantern be the feeling of being accompanied. Here, no one rests alone. Even if you are in a silent room, the story is with you, the desert is with you, and many other listeners are breathing slowly too. Let the lantern stay. Let everything else dim for you. Now the story becomes shorter. More space, less effort. In and out. In and out. You are allowed to drift. You are allowed to forget the plot. You are allowed to let the words become wind. The pyramid stands. The mastaba rests. The coffer stays closed. The sand smooths. The night widens. Your breath continues. And if in the morning you remember nothing else, let your body remember this. You can be protected by quiet. You can heal without solving. You can rest without proving. Now, just before we let the story end, a gentle invitation. Only if you want it, only if it feels easy. If this story brought you calm, you can leave a gentle comment for yourself or share where you're listening from when you're ready. And if you'd like to return to this quiet corner of the night again, don't forget to subscribe to Ancient Sleep Story for more peaceful nighttime journeys. But for now, you don't have to do anything. Just breathe, inhale, exhale. Good night.